Picture this. You're standing at the edge of an impossible situation. Behind you, the most powerful army in the ancient world is thundering toward you with chariots and weapons. In front of you stretches a body of water, so vast it might as well be an ocean. You have nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. This is it. Now imagine that water, splitting apart like a massive curtain being drawn back, revealing dry ground where there should be crushing depths. This is the story of the Red Sea crossing, but so much more than just an ancient tale. Today, we're going deep into one of history's most profound moments of transformation. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this story has captivated humanity for over 3,000 years and what it reveals about the nature of breakthrough itself. Welcome to what might be the most important 20 minutes you spend this week. We're not just retelling a Bible story today. We're excavating the psychological, spiritual, and even scientific layers of an event that fundamentally change how humanity understands a relationship between faith and impossibility. Whether you're religious, spiritual, skeptical, or somewhere in between, the Red Sea crossing contains universal principles about human transformation that apply to every impossible situation you'll ever face. By the time we're done, you'll have a completely new framework for approaching the seemingly insurmountable obstacles in your own life. But first, let me ask you something. What's your Red Sea? What's that situation in your life that feels completely impossible, where you feel trapped between your past and an uncertain future? Let's start with context, because the Red Sea crossing doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's the climax of the greatest liberation story ever told. The Israelites have just escaped 400 years of slavery in Egypt. Think about that for a moment. 400 years. That's longer than the United States has existed. We're talking about a people who had never known freedom, whose great-great-great-grandparents had never known freedom. But here's what's fascinating. Freedom isn't just about leaving your prison. It's about what happens next. And what happens next is that Pharaoh changes his mind. See, this is where the story gets psychologically brilliant. Pharaoh represents more than just an ancient king. He embodies what psychologists call the oppressive force that doesn't want to let go. This could be an abusive relationship, a limiting belief system, addiction, financial bondage, or any system that benefits from keeping you trapped. And here's the thing about oppressive forces. They don't just let you walk away quietly. They pursue. They make you doubt your decision to leave. They create crisis moments designed to make you turn back. So the Israelites find themselves at what the Hebrew text calls Yam Suf, literally Sea of Reeds or Red Sea. Geographically, they're trapped. Psychologically, they're in what we now call learned helplessness, that state where you've been conditioned to believe that resistance is futile. Listen to what they say to Moses. Were there no graves in Egypt that you brought us out here to die in the wilderness? This is victim mentality 101. When faced with an impossible situation, the default is to romanticize the prison you just left. But here's where it gets interesting. Moses doesn't try to solve the problem. He doesn't form a committee. He doesn't develop a strategic plan. Instead, he says something that defies all human logic. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. In our productivity-obsessed culture, this sounds insane. When facing an impossible situation, everything in us screams, do something. But Moses is introducing a revolutionary concept. Sometimes the greatest action is non-action. Sometimes breakthrough requires surrender rather than striving. This isn't passivity. It's what mystics call active waiting, or what psychologists term strategic patience. It's the recognition that some problems are too big for human solutions and require what we might call intervention from a higher order of reality. Now we come to the moment everyone remembers, the sea splitting. But let's dig deeper. Here's what's crucial. God doesn't just wave a magic wand. He tells Moses to lift up his staff and stretch out his hand over the sea. In other words, the miraculous requires human participation. The breakthrough happens at the intersection of divine power and human faith in action. This is profound. It means that even supernatural intervention requires our cooperation. We can't just sit back and wait for miracles. We have to step into the process, even when we can't see the outcome. The text says the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night. Some scholars suggest this might reference a natural phenomenon, perhaps a wind set-down effect where strong winds can temporarily displace water. But here's what's beautiful about this. Whether you believe it was purely supernatural or a precisely timed natural event, the miracle isn't diminished. If anything, it becomes more remarkable. The perfect convergence of natural forces at exactly the right moment for exactly the right purpose. The imagery here is intentionally evocative. Water, the symbol of chaos in ancient Near Eastern thought, becomes protective walls. The very thing that threatened to destroy them becomes their shield. This is the pattern of transformation. Our greatest threats often become our greatest protections when viewed from the other side of breakthrough. But here's the part that gives me chills every time. The people still had to walk through. The sea is parted, but they're looking at walls of water held back by nothing but faith. Every step requires courage. Every step is a choice to trust in something beyond their understanding. This is the anatomy of every breakthrough. There's always a gap between the promise and the fulfillment, a space that can only be crossed by faith. The miracle creates the possibility, but we still have to walk through it. Now, let's go deeper, because the Red Sea crossing operates on multiple levels of meaning that reveal timeless truths about transformation. In ancient symbolism, passing through water represents death and rebirth. The Israelites who enter the sea are still psychologically slaves. They're carrying 400 years of mental bondage. But the people who emerge on the other side are fundamentally different. This is why, immediately after crossing, they break into song, the Song of the Sea, one of the oldest poems in human literature. They're not just celebrating escape, they're celebrating identity transformation. They entered as refugees, they emerge as a nation. The Hebrew word for the walls of water can also mean birth canal. Think about this imagery. The Israelites are passing through a cosmic womb, being born as a free people. The Red Sea becomes the birth canal of a nation. This connects to something profound about how breakthrough works in our lives. True transformation often requires passing through spaces that feel like death, but are actually birth. The end of one identity and the emergence of another. Thousands of years later, early Christians saw the Red Sea crossing as a precursor to baptism, the symbolic death of the old self and resurrection of the new. This isn't just religious symbolism, it's archetypal psychology. Every culture has rituals of passing through water to represent fundamental life change. Anthropologists call the space between shores a liminal space, a threshold between one state of being and another. In the middle of the Red Sea, the Israelites are no longer slaves, but not yet free. They're in between identities, in between worlds. This is where transformation happens, not in the comfort zones of where we've been or where we're going, but in the uncomfortable space of transition. The Red Sea teaches us that breakthrough often requires embracing the liminal space rather than rushing through it. Let's address the elephant in the room. Did this actually happen? And more importantly, does it matter? Historians and archaeologists debate the historical details, and that's healthy scholarship. Some point to natural phenomena that could explain water displacement. Others focus on the literary and theological meaning rather than literal historicity. But here's what's fascinating. Regardless of your position on the historical details, the story operates on a level of truth that transcends mere factual accuracy. It speaks to something universal about the human experience of facing impossible situations. Modern neuroscience is revealing something remarkable about how our brains process breakthrough moments. When we're facing impossible situations, our brain's default mode is to scan for familiar patterns and solutions. But true breakthrough often requires what neuroscientists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to think outside existing patterns. The Red Sea moment represents the ultimate cognitive flexibility, the willingness to consider solutions that defy conventional logic. This kind of thinking is actually measurable in brain scans. People who regularly practice what we might call breakthrough thinking show increased activity in areas associated with creativity, and problem solving. At the quantum level, physicists are discovering that reality is far more fluid and responsive to consciousness than we previously imagined. While we can't prove divine intervention through quantum mechanics, the field has opened us to understanding that the relationship between mind, intention, and reality is far more complex than classical physics suggested. The Red Sea story anticipates this understanding by thousands of years. It suggests that reality itself can be responsive to faith, intention, and divine purpose in ways that transcend mechanical cause and effect. So how do we apply these insights to our actual lives? How do we navigate our own Red Sea moments? First, recognize when you're in a Red Sea situation. These are characterized by feeling trapped between an unacceptable past and an impossible future, facing a problem that seems to require resources or abilities you don't possess, experiencing pressure from forces trying to pull you back to old patterns, needing breakthrough rather than just improvement. When Moses faced the Red Sea, he did 4 things that we can apply. 1. He acknowledged the reality of the situation. No denial, no false positivity. 2. He connected with a power greater than himself, whether you call this God, universe, higher consciousness, or collective wisdom. 3. He combined faith with action. He lifted the staff, he stretched out his hand. 4. He created space for the miraculous. He didn't try to force a human solution. Remember Moses' command. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. This doesn't mean inaction. It means stop trying to force solutions that aren't working. Create space for insights and opportunities you haven't considered. Release your need to control the process while remaining fully engaged in it. Trust that breakthrough often comes from directions you didn't expect. When your breakthrough moment comes, and it will come, remember that you still have to walk through it. The sea may part, but you have to take the steps. This requires courage to move forward despite uncertainty, willingness to leave the familiar behind, faith that the path will hold even when you can't see the end, recognition that transformation happens in the walking, not just in the opening. Here's something most people don't think about. What happens after you cross your Red Sea? The Israelites didn't go straight to the Promised Land. They spent 40 years in the wilderness, learning how to live as free people. This is crucial. Breakthrough is just the beginning of transformation, not the end. After your Red Sea moment, expect a wilderness phase where you're integrating your new identity, unlearning old patterns, and developing the internal capacity to sustain your breakthrough. Immediately after crossing, the Israelites sang. Celebration isn't just a luxury after breakthrough. It's essential. It rewires your brain to recognize and attract more breakthrough moments. It shifts your identity from someone who experiences problems to someone who experiences miracles. The crossing became a defining story for the Jewish people, retold every Passover for over 3,000 years. Your breakthrough moments need to become part of your personal mythology, stories you tell yourself about who you are and what's possible for you. The Red Sea crossing isn't just an ancient story. It's a template for transformation that's as relevant today as it was 3,000 years ago. It teaches us that impossible situations often precede impossible breakthroughs. True solutions sometimes come from dimensions beyond human logic. Breakthrough requires both divine grace and human participation. The space between problem and solution is where transformation happens. Our greatest obstacles can become our greatest testimonies. So I want to leave you with this question. What if your current impossible situation isn't actually a dead end, but a Red Sea moment? What if the very thing that feels like it's going to destroy you is actually the doorway to your greatest breakthrough? Your Red Sea is waiting. The question isn't whether it will part. It's whether you'll have the courage to walk through when it does. If this video shifted your perspective on what's possible in your life, let me know in the comments. Share your own Red Sea story, or tell me what impossible situation you're facing right now. Sometimes breakthrough begins with simply speaking the impossible out loud.